The Vent People. About the author. This book was created by Dylan Herbert, who has created and written 3 other titles. These titles include Jingleman Volume 1, Dearly Beloved Volume 1, and Sergio, Even Lilies Weep. All works by Dylan thus far relate to each book, diving deeper to create a world of horror as you learn more of the world of the Websters, Detective Wayne Clark, the Wayward, Earth, and those affected by the various characters. You will be captivated as you go down this rabbit hole. All works by Dylan Herbert are based on experiences he has had in his lifetime, and most characters describe people he has met. Although the stories are exaggerated, there are still true experiences he has had during his lifetime or experiences others have told to him. In 2022, Dylan began this journey. This is the 4th book. The Vent People is its own story. However, it gradually is connected to the other books. You only need to have basic knowledge of other characters who were introduced in his previous books. This book introduces new characters to the series. This book can be found on YouTube, Wattpad, Amazon, Apple iBooks, and Goodreads. Thanks for reading. Chapters are better known as the table of contents and are as follows. About the author. Chapter 1, The Church. Chapter 2, The Baptism. Chapter 3, The Ohio Man. Chapter 4, Dead Men Tell No Tales. Chapter 5, The Delirium Effect. Chapter 6, The Son of the Gillicunar, Part 1. Chapter 7, The Son of the Gillicunar, Part 2. Chapter 8, The Son of the Gillicunar, Part 3. Chapter 9, The Cure to Madness. Chapter 10, A Ragged Robin. Character Bios and Information. Chapter 1, The Church. My name is Austin, and for the privacy of my remaining family, I will not disclose my last name. I grew up in a small town in Virginia called Smithfield. Smithfield was a rural area in the country, and for some it was quiet and peaceful. For others, it was a means to escape the drama-filled life of the city. As for me, it was the origins of the darkest part of my life. People in this quiet town usually stay to themselves, and really, it's honest living and affordable. You can see many farmers taking care of their crops, livestock, and families. You can see workers in the packing plants working hard, and life was booming. Folks went to church, had kickbacks, and really this was a close-knit community. However, as a boy, I wanted adventure, so when I got a full scholarship to leave Virginia and attend the Webster's Hall for Better Education, which was often abbreviated to WHB, I instantly jumped at that opportunity. My folks were nice, and I had a little sister called Ava. I loved my family, but I felt like a prisoner. So, in 2019, I attended WHB, and for 4 years, I lived away from home. However, it was on that faithful night that the moon turned crimson red, the skies became forever black as a shadow was cast on my life. Some days I wish I had never witnessed a scene so dreadful as this. On that night, I lost my loving mother and father. If I had to describe this event, it would be the birth of a boogeyman. You may not believe in monsters or the paranormal, but by the end of my story you will. Monsters have been the stories parents told their children to keep them in line. From ancient times to modern times, from Europe to North and South America, from Rome to even Poland, monsters have existed in all facets of every culture. This was also the day that the name the Vent People was coined and would forever haunt my dreams. These monsters took my beloved little sister, Ava. My name is Austin, and this is my account of the Vent People. There are so many people directly impacted by this story that not even the gods could help us. My family, the New Union Church, the police, the Webster family bloodline, and the Wayward all played a part in the once quiet town of Smithfield as madness and darkness was born. It was during this time that the New Union Church would be known for the cause of the Vent People. Once a loving pastor would be driven to create a force that would rival a man called Sergio Webster and even the Wayward. We all heard rumors of Sergio Webster and the Wayward Lady being the world's greatest threat. However, nobody believed that. It was a time where folk tales were frowned upon, and religion had been dead for decades. The man that would change the world forever in 2024 was Bobby, a monster whose origins are unknown, a demon in sheep's clothing, and the very man willing to sacrifice the world to obtain his goals. It wasn't until 2024 when I witnessed this dreadfully frightening event that the whole world knew that other places other than Earth existed. This is the account of the Vent people in its entirety. Documented accounts, both through transcripts, notes left by the damned, voice recordings, videos, and the accounts of the followers of the church. I am Austin, and if you can't stomach blood, grotesque creatures from hell itself, violence, and madness, please do not listen to this story. Hello, Mother, I say, with annoyance in my voice. I just wanted to make sure you were doing all right, baby boy. My mother said to me in her Spanish accent. My mother was from Mexico. I'm glad I did not inherit her voice. Even though I looked to be of Spanish descent, my English was flawless, a trait I no doubt picked up from my father. Why did my mother always call me when my friends were around? I loved my mother, but she was suffocating me with the constant calling me. To be honest, I needed a break. I guess if I knew what would transpire, I would have held these memories close to my heart. We as humans are never grateful for things until the day we lose them forever. My mother always started asking me question after question. She and I exchanged words for about 15 minutes before she asked me, bluntly, Austin, when are you coming home? You know I worry that you may forget to eat. I annoy you because I care about you. I grew quiet as you could hear laughter in the background, from college students playing around like young adults tend to do. Fellow students and friends kept joking about my mother being my secret lover. However, I ignored their jokes and continued the conversation with my mother. I finally spoke again and told my mom I was going to visit the family on Saturday. It was now Wednesday. My mother seemed overjoyed. Just then, my dad, Albert, interrupts and starts talking to her about hearing noises in the walls. Albert told his wife that rats had been in the walls again. Apparently, the rats would move around inside the walls and vents at night. They had been eating the electrical wires, often causing the light bulbs to either flicker or not work. Albert, we need to call the exterminator. What was his name again? My mother asks. Billy Tarvin, or just William. My father replies. I never understood how the name Billy was a nickname for William. It blew my mind. Albert, guess what? Austin is visiting us soon, my mother exclaimed, with excitement in her voice. Suddenly, Albert told the two of us he had to talk with me alone. I hear my parents kiss each other. My parents always loved each other, and as far as I knew, they never argued amongst themselves, or at least not in front of me and Ava. When my father had gotten to a quiet place, he started talking to me in a serious voice. There were no emotions in his voice, no excitement, no joy, nothing but the sharp, serious tone coming from his mouth. Son, there are no rats in the walls. I went down to the new Union Church with your mother and Ava on Sunday for a brunch, and that's when I witnessed it, Austin. My father told me. He said, during brunch at the church they often went to, he went to help Pastor Bobby with the light fixture in his office. The two of them often went fishing together on the weekends, so my father felt he knew his friend. However, he heard the same noises in the walls as he did at the house. Albert explained how it looked as if the walls were being stripped and replaced. He paid it no mind till he heard breathing inside the walls. Pastor Bobby said it was just rodents and termites inside the walls, but being a cautious man, my father did not believe that. There was a hole in the wall, and what he saw was a pair of dark orange eyes peering back at him. My father stepped back and quickly asked Bobby what was in the walls. Bobby finally spoke to my father. I wish you did not go snooping around, my old friend. I could say that it's just rats in the walls, but I doubt you will believe me. I'm sorry, Albert. My father told me how Bobby grabbed him and tried shoving his head inside the hole of the wall, as if his once-old friend wanted something to grab him. My father knew something was off, for Pastor Bobby never was aggressive a day in his life. Just then, something cut him, and his arm was wet. What could be inside the walls? Was this a prank? My father tried and tried to escape, but the thing on the other side held a firm grip and would not let him go, so he took his hunting knife out and stabbed the foul, unknown creature. Just then, Albert, my father, heard a sweet, childlike voice that made him puzzled and afraid. The voice said, "Albert, that hurts. Albert, Albert, Albert." The voice getting deeper and deeper each time. Wait. There was a vent next to the hole, and finally the creature released its grip. Relief from fear was only temporary because the vent instantly opened. The vent was shut tight, with 4 deadbolts, and my father's heart began to race. Albert's heart monitoring watch began going off, beep, beep, beep. If his watch reached over 115 beats per minute, this was a sign of a possible incoming panic attack. The average beats per minute, or BPM, was usually 60 to 100 for most people. Sweat accumulated on my father's forehead and eyebrows. My father tried running away, but Pastor Bobby hit him in the head with a chair. Thus my father laid seeming dead on the floor. My father spoke of feeling like his head injury was being stuffed with something. But what? His cut on his arm from being grabbed and his head injury due to Pastor Bobby hitting him were now on fire. I'm not talking mild, mind you. It felt like a burn from putting your hand on a burning stove or inside a heated oven. My father explained how this sensation felt. He told me he felt a wet substance enter his head, and he had flashbacks of his entire life in a matter of seconds. However, seconds later he saw himself at the edge, and below him was the entire universe. Albert spoke of seeing stars, planets, the moon, the sun, and the vast expanse of the universe, a beautiful sight to behold. This scene was something of pure beauty and elegance that made one question their sanity. In this very moment his fears were erased, but then it happened. A mysterious voice called out to him. Then the unknown voice walked to him. It was a creature from hell itself. Then my father told me before he passed out from either the fear of it all or the shock of his injury that he saw a glimpse of the creature before passing out. In the very words of Albert, the creature was very tall. It easily reached the ceiling, hunching over like a man with scoliosis. The foul creature from the walls smelled like smoke. It smelled like burning flesh. The creature was hunched over, and as it walked, you heard crunching noises. Its head, hands, and feet were large. Its body was slim, and you could see the bones in its chest, ribs, arms, and legs. Its face was severely deformed, as if it was inbred or suffered great radiation. When my father looked into its eyes, he was captivated with something. What Albert was captivated by wasn't fear, but he felt briefly like he could trust this creature. That feeling you get when you see a loved one or even a friend. However, he soon blacked out. When he woke up, he wasn't bleeding, he wasn't even hurt, and the wall with a hole in it was gone. Was this merely a dream, or had this really happened? Ever since that day, he could hear weird voices inside his brain tell him things. My father told me that my mother said it was just stress from his job, for she caught him staring into space some days. According to my mother, my dad would talk about space and that his mind was deteriorating. Once things that brought him joy were now gone from his mind. However, Albert said that every now and then his mind was back to normal, and he knew it wasn't long before he would be back in a trance-like state. I laughed at my father's story, for it was obvious it was made up. These were ramblings of a madman who had entered a midlife crisis, for Pastor Bobby was the nicest soul I knew, and I often played with his children when I was younger. There was no way this was true. It's not that I didn't believe my dad, I just thought he needed to get checked out by a doctor and that he worked too hard. Just then he started to break down into tears and yells. "Austin, I am scared. I feel like that creature in the walls and vents is inside my head. I don't know what to. Just then, my father stops in mid-conversation. I am confused as to why, but then he just says, "Never mind." He then says, "Austin, Austin, Austin," 3 times, and at first it sounded like a child's voice. Then it was my father's voice. Then it was a voice so grotesque and dark that I almost dropped the phone. I chalked this up to me being tired, for it was test after test at school and I wasn't getting enough sleep. I soon told my dad I needed to go. We said our goodbyes and I hung up the phone. This was the last time I would hear the voices of my parents. Soon, it was Friday morning, and school was out for the break. I decided to surprise my family by coming home a day early. On the trip home, I drive and drive, but in my mind, I constantly thought about the conversation with my father. Was my father mad, or could this be true? No, it couldn't, for it sounded like the ramblings of a madman. I am 2 blocks away, and I see Pastor Bobby washing his car, so I decide to stop to talk to him for a minute. "Good afternoon, Pastor Bobby. Have you seen my father lately?" I ask with curiosity. Pastor Bobby usually smiled at me and was eager to answer all my questions in the past. However, today was different. With a face emotionless and a stern voice, he began to speak. "Why do you want to know, child? Has Albert told you something recently?" Pastor Bobby asks. I tell Pastor Bobby that my father has been rambling about the walls. Just then, Pastor Bobby grabs my arm harshly. His grip was firm and held tight. I felt like my arm was about to be torn apart. He never acted like this. Why were the recent events so strange, and what was going on in this town? I quickly pull back my hand and yell at Pastor Bobby, "What the fuck is wrong with you and my father? You know what, I gotta go. Maybe I will see later at church," as I quickly walk away. However, now thinking back, I heard another voice behind me. It said, "See you soon, boy." I thought nothing of this. I headed back into my car and drove to my parents' house. I approached the driveway of our house. All the lights were off, all the windows opened, and the garage was half open. What the hell happened here? I hear screams. It was the voice of my mother and Ava. I quickly run for the garage door. However, a disgusting-looking hand reaches underneath the garage and shuts it closed. The hand looked just as my father described on the phone. I say to myself, what the fuck was that? I am desperately trying to keep my composure. Was someone breaking into my family's home? And what was that hand I saw? There was no time for questions. I try running to the front door. It is locked, so I grab my keys. Just then, I hear my mother screaming for help. The house sounds like there is a fight going on. I scream and yell for help. Now the neighbors are coming to my aid, or so I thought. I tell them someone is breaking into my home. An elderly man tells me it's just Pastor Bobby cleansing our home, and I should be grateful. By this time, I am confused and angry. My mother is crying and screaming for help, "You dumb fuck." I yelled at the old man. I quickly grab my phone to call the police, and on the top corner of my phone, I see words, "No service. I am broken and don't know what to do next." Just then, I see a message appear on my phone. Had this message always been here? It was a message 3 hours prior from my father. I quickly open the text message to find a video clip of my father speaking. In the video, he explains a lot of things. Was my dad mad? Was this a nightmare? Would this night ever end? The message was as follows. If you are reading this note, Austin, me, and your mother are dead. I pray it is only me and that your mother and sister are okay. Ever since my encounter with Pastor Bobby, my mind hasn't been the same. I don't think anything happened. At least at first, I didn't. But the dark, grotesque man of my dreams constantly talks to me. From what I can gather, Pastor Bobby has something going on inside the church. People have gone missing, and the church's followers have gone mad, following this madman. They would do anything. This is no normal church, but in my heart, I feel this is a cult. I have been snooping around the church and don't think anyone has found me out yet. However, every night the windows open and then shut, and we hear things moving. The noises are coming from inside the pipes, vents, and walls. Those damned vents are always shaking. Your mother says it's rats, or at least that's what she wants to believe. I have set up a live feed to our house, using the house's cameras, with this video clip that will send the moment I am no longer in the land of the living. I am scared, Austin. I feel like I am losing my mind. Or maybe it's already gone. Ever since that fateful day, I have not been the same. I love you, son. Very much. Until we meet again. Just then, the video clip ended, and I received another message from my dad. What the hell was going on? This time it's a private link sent from a cloud-sharing service, which appeared on my phone. Still confused as to how I saw these messages, if I had no service. It was then I saw it all, the scene that would haunt me forever. This was the first documented case of what would later be called the Vent People. "Hey, honey, I'm home," a woman with jet black hair says as she walks into the house. "Honey, where are you? Are you playing on your computer?" the woman says as she puts her coat on the rack and puts her keys on the counter. The woman was a judge and had a long day. Her husband was a computer programmer and worked from home. They had a big house and a daughter named Ava. Just then, she heard something inside the walls again, but this time it sounded like it was near the vents. The woman shouted, "Albert, did you call the exterminators to get rid of the rats inside the walls?" She kept calling for her husband repeatedly, but soon realized the closer she got to the bedroom, the darker it got. "Albert, you're scaring me. Baby, are you okay?" she said in a hushed, scared voice. She stepped and walked closer to their bedroom. She stepped into something wet, but what was it? She turned on the flashlight on her phone and instantly dropped her phone. What she saw was her husband's torso ripped, laying on the ground, and his head dropped from the overhead vent. She fumbled and tried to get her phone, but someone grabbed her hand. "Mommy?" She sighed a sigh of relief, for it was Ava. However, when she began to comfort her daughter's voice got deeper and deeper. Her daughter, Ava, kept saying "Mommy" repeatedly. The lights came on, flickering, and you could see a creature enter Ava's mouth. The monster was 10 feet tall, maybe even 15, and was hunching over from hitting its head on the ceiling. The monster took over the body of the girl and began chasing the woman. Ava was no longer a little girl, but had stretched out limbs and the teeth of a monster. Ava became grotesque, huge, and something out of a horror book. The monster ripped the woman till she was unconscious, ripping her arms apart, tearing her body off her torso, eating her intestines and even her brain. Now the mother looked just like her husband did, lifeless. Suddenly, 2 other creatures that looked identical came and wore the dead parents' bodies like suits. A few moments later, you could hear a voice in the shadows. "I'm sorry, Albert. You just knew too much." The voice was somewhat distorted, but since I was in shock from the events, it didn't register until later. This was the first account of the Vent People. The story of the Vent People originated in Smithfield, Virginia in 2024. Where did they come from? What did they want? Well, I wasn't sure, but I wouldn't rest until I knew the truth. Would I die trying to find out? Most likely, but I didn't care. Soon after the door opened, the lights went back on. The doors opened and everything seemed normal, but inside you could smell rotting, burning flesh all about. My parents and sister came out smiling. They looked strange. They had the same emotionless expressions as the neighbors. Who were these people? They soon joined the neighbors, and it was then I realized something. All of them had stitches on their necks, like they all had surgery or something of the sort. It was small, but I could still see it. However, those fake smiles soon turned to me and chased me till I ran back into the house. For the old man that I encountered earlier tore off his head, and a huge creature appeared in his place. He threw the skin he had to the ground like a suit, and eventually, the rest of them started chasing me. I ran and ran until I couldn't run, but I just ended up in my house with 7 of these things chasing me. I locked myself in my room with the UV lights on. I had a fancy light that emitted UV light as its source. The creatures banged and banged, but eventually ripped the door of its hinges. However, screamed in pain when that UV hit their skin. I took this as an opportunity to run, and that's what I did. So, I ran to the police station to show my evidence to the police. At first, everything seemed like it was going to point us in the right direction, until a sheriff from another place took over the case. His name was Officer Bruce Odeski. I only pray that I never run into that son of a bitch again. Officer Odeski was the actual devil, and I would believe anyone who told me that the vent people were his children. However, not even Bruce could stop the carnage that Pastor Bobby would soon unleash into this world. I, Austin Smith, went to the police station in the year 2024 on a spring afternoon. The one to take my statement would be Officer Juliet Braxton. She took my statement and accused me of taking illegal substances until she saw the fear on my face. I eventually even showed her my late father's video, so she took my statement and recommended I stay at a shelter or motel. Officer Braxton says, "This was something out of a horror movie, according to the eldest son of the family, who visited his family's home for winter break. Austin was his name, and he barely made it out alive. All he heard was one word repeated over and over. It sounded like a child, but had a deep voice. Austin told the police that on that night, on that red-stained moon, on the night he lost his entire family to the vent people, that these people were tall, for he saw eyes looking at him as they ran into the vents. He told the police he smelled blood, and they confirmed that the whole entire household was missing. A very mysterious story, but we will find out the truth." Chapter 2. The Baptism. Praise the Lord for giving us the gift of his radiant light, a Pastor Bobby says to his congregation. He told the congregation a story that warped the minds of non-believers, but for the believers it made sense. Pastor Bobby came to Smithfield, Virginia in the fall of 2019. The time before COVID-19 sent the nation and maybe the world into chaos. Pastor Bobby's origins are unknown. However, he preached often how God sent him to protect the world from the powers of the wayward and the Webster legacy. According to him, the Webster bloodline was cursed, and on a full moon, they would transform not into werewolves but spawns of the devil. He also preached that the world taught the false teachings of the wayward, for the wayward lady had been gaining followers. Unbeknownst to the people of Smithfield, Bobby had stolen an artifact of the 12 and the Queen's symbol of radiance. But which artifact was in his possession? Later, his notes in his office would lead us all to the truth. Pastor Bobby begins to speak. "My friends, we must dedicate our lives to be without sin. For God is watching us. I and Elder Xavier have created a cure to all illnesses and to protect us from the sinful teachings of the world." Just then, the whole entire church began screaming, "All hail Saint Bobby, God's mighty champion." Over and over they sang Pastor Bobby's praises. When he had finished his sermon, it became quiet, and the walls started to rumble. The lights went dark, and 3 seconds later, they turned back on. The non-believers were gone, and so were the group of people who came to expose the new Union Church. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang from the vents above the baptism pool. Bodies came falling from the overhead vent and splashed into the pool. I then saw something scurry upwards into the vents as Pastor Bobby came closer to the pool and spoke. "I am sorry, my brothers and sisters, these unbelievers have been returned to the soil of the earth. May God rest their souls." I had seen enough. I quickly called for backup, and my body camera recorded everything. This was enough to put away this church, the pastor, and its members away for a lifetime or so, I thought. My name is Officer Juliet Braxton, and before the night was over, I would be in a fight for life against the vent people. Me and Austin would fight for survival that night. The vent people was a name that would haunt the small town of Smithfield forever, and that's the only name I could think to name these grotesque parasitic monsters which roamed in the shadows. If you fear the name Sergio Webster and the Wayward Lady, the Vent People would make you realize that these two factions were mere fairy tales compared to this new threat. After seeing this horrific scene, I was paralyzed with fear. My first thought was that the new Union Church was drugging and brainwashing its members. However, something more sinister was at play. I'm watching this scene unfold before my very eyes, with Austin. Then all of a sudden, a little boy spots us and yells at the top of his lungs, "Pastor Bobby, I found the unbelievers! They are hiding behind the pews!" This fucking kid ratted us out, I shout to myself. Even the children were not safe from the hold Pastor Bobby held in this town. Just then, Pastor Bobby and the congregation approaches us, and I knew our cover was blown. Before I tell you what happened next, let me tell you of what happened that day Austin came to me. As the name John Doe is used to hide the names of people, Austin used the last name Smith to hide who his family names were. This was also to protect the remaining family he had. Austin Smith witnessed his family dead. His mother and father were gone that winter, so why didn't he tell the police department till the spring the following year? Austin told a police officer the tale. However, his phone was broken from running from this horrific scene. So, on that fateful day, Austin witnessed the Vent People. He was reported to the town's Board of Medicine. Smithfield's Board of Medicine was to determine the physical and mental health of all its residents, and they deemed Austin a threat to society. Leading this Board of Medicine was Julius Wagner Xavier Peterson. However, people of the New Union Church knew him as Elder Xavier. So, in the winter of 2023, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and placed in a mental hospital till the spring. Maybe it was to shut up this poor soul, but Austin later told me that Elder Xavier told lies upon lies. This is the account of Austin's stay in Peterson Bobby's mental institution for wellness. This journey would not hold him back, and so for 5 months Austin was patient. The last memory I had was telling an officer of what happened. However, now it is all a blur, and my head is spinning. I cannot remember what happened to put me in this unfamiliar place. They make me see doctor after doctor each day to rehabilitate me. However, I don't feel like anything is wrong. I must take medications every single day, according to a Dr. Peterson. Day in and day out, it's like the same day on repeat, like an infinite loop. The walls are white. I only have a sink and toilet in my room with a walk-in shower. I haven't felt the sun's kiss on my skin for some time now. I have been isolated for so long, I don't know if it's been days or just minutes. However, eventually, I entered the last stage of my treatment. They taught me many things there, such as the Wayward Lady, Sergio Webster, Pastor Bobby, and finally, about a place in Ohio, which was considered a holy place. My body is used to the drugs they have been injecting me with, however, they do not know this. I soon would figure out who Pastor Bobby is. The doctors would tell me stuff, and eventually I just said, I agreed to everything. No doubt this was a reason for my early release. The day finally came. I was excited, however I felt like there was a piece of me that was missing and gone. The always bright white room looked different as I awoke. There was a bed in the corner. The other objects were nowhere to be found. Where had the toilet and shower gone? It's as if they never were there to begin with. In the middle of the room, on the ceiling, there was a vent. Only moments later it happened. I could see my breath. The temperature had fallen by 50 degrees. The more time passed, the colder it got. I was getting tired, and my eyes were getting heavy. Then I heard a voice coming from the corner. Or was it the ceiling? Wait, the voice was coming from everywhere. A man approached me, and I saw him clear as day. A man in a red dress suit, with a black dress shirt and bow tie. His red slacks looked so clean, and he wore a cowboy hat. Oh my Lord! Oh my God! Look at what we have here, Xavier. The last offspring is here fighting for his life, but soon the queen of the spatial expanse will devour him. Albert tried to win, but didn't get a chance, the mysterious voice said. Wait a minute, I knew that voice, but I couldn't remember shit. Just then I heard a voice in my head. It was my own voice, or at least that's what I think. Wake the fuck up, Austin. You can't sleep here. Not now, not ever. Remember what the new Union Church did to your father, mother, and your beloved sister, Ava. But how would I fight back? The voice told me not to be afraid, for that same queen of the spatial expanse was on my side. I soon realized that the man with the cowboy hat was Pastor Bobby. However, it was too late, for he attacked me and beat me with a metal pipe till my head was bleeding. I hear ringing in my head as blood drips to the floor. Drip, drip, drip. I felt as if I was at death's door. But I would not die today, as fate had other plans. What came out the vent above us was a terrifying screech, and then a hand so large it grabbed Pastor Bobby and told him to let me go. You could hear the creature break Pastor Bobby's ribs and bones. Pastor Bobby said he would let me go, for now. Bobby was laughing so hard, and then stopped. His smile faded away quickly, as if he was never laughing, but at least my imprisonment was over. However, this freedom was only temporary, so, in the spring of 2024, I was released thanks to that unknown creature. Why had it come to save me? Before I left, they all told me that the queen of the spatial expanse had told me I was not to be harmed. Who was this queen? I would soon find out. When Austin came to me in the spring of 2024, he told me he would tell me a story that would make me question reality. He told me that he fixed his phone and sent me the footage and message from his late father. I definitely believed that Austin was on drugs. However, this was a last plea from a scared kid. Austin was 19 when I first met him. How could a 19-year-old boy be driven to the edge? By the end of Austin's journey, he would be driven into madness, darkness, and insanity. But at last, the darkness did have a glimmer of light. Austin would become the hero of this town, the lifetime hero of Detective Robbie Wayne Clark, and a threat to both the Wayward and the Webster bloodline. Now you're caught up on recent events. Now time to get back to the current situation, me and Austin, in the church. Pastor Bobby approaches the two of us as we slowly reveal our hiding spot. We see two men behind him, a man in a purple and black cloak, and also another man. This second man seemed to be off. He was a big man, but his eyes told stories of war. On his neck, he wore Pizer Gomi Vinupi, which was an artifact of the 12. This item allowed one to create anything from the dirt of the soil, from mud, or any material. This man stood tall, and a dark feeling was in the room. Austin quickly informed me that this man was Elder Xavier. The room seemed tense, and I pressed my emergency button, which was located on my duty belt. Although I already called for backup, the entire police department needed to know this situation was serious. All we had to do was survive 20 minutes. However, fate may have had other plans. The man in the purple and black cloak was tall. His jawline on his right side exposed nothing but bones, as if he had been burned. He then spoke. "Greetings, sons and daughters of mankind. My name is Darius Von de Elgato, and the rage for the Wayward and Sergio Webster fuels my passion for destruction. Bobby is the savior of Earth, feel his great radiance." Darius Von de Elgato was the reason Pastor Bobby sought to cleanse the entire world through religion, for he had failed when he died at the hands of Sergio Webster decades ago. However, through the dark magic of the forbidden tombs, he came back a grim reaper. Pastor Bobby would soon be remembered in history as the Ohio Man. Pastor Bobby then speaks. "From the holy lands of Ohio to the barren, cursed tombs of Virginia, I will cleanse all sins of non-believers, and you will return to the soil. My children, feast tonight on the bones, the flesh of these vermin. I am your savior and your champion. I am good in this sin-driven world. I am the Ohio Man." As Pastor Bobby said this, the people who were believers' bones started to break, bend, crack, and rip as they charged to us. However, we were prepared, and as a precaution, with the aid of Austin's account of what took place that dreadful day, we made UV light grenades. As these grenades hit the floor, you heard screaming as the monsters screamed, a sound so horrific that we both were paralyzed. Austin was quickly grabbed by these foul creatures, crushing his ribs. I heard his screams of pain as he was thrown into a wall, and what happened next would shake me to my core. As Austin was thrown into the wall, a large hand grabbed him from an overhead vent and dragged him into the vents. But it soon became quiet as you could hear a pen drop. The next time I would see Austin was 2 hours later, after the battle. Only moments later the doors swung open. It was reinforcements, or so I thought. It was a man smoking a cigarette, and in his arm was no gun, but an axe. He had something like rope around his neck, but from his direction you could smell the foul stench of death and decaying flesh. You could see the colors of his uniform that had the words "Sheriff" on his shirt. He threw his axe at the masses of creatures, and soon there lay a pile of corpses. "Sorry, I'm late to the party, kids. My name is Officer Bruce Odeski." Elder Xavier and Darius soon fled, and so it was only me, Pastor Bobby, and Bruce. However, what would greet Elder Xavier and Darius wasn't Austin. It wasn't friends, it was the son of Carnage, the man that had killed Darius Von de El Gato the first time. Sergio Webster, for if Bruce was around, you knew what followed. However, the Ohio man had other plans. Who was the Ohio man? Where did Pastor Bobby originate from? We would soon find out. Chapter 3. The Ohio Man. I am walking in a desert in Ohio with my husband. We were exploring the ruins of the Expanse. According to urban myth and legend, this place could connect Earth to various other universes via a portal. Of course, this was made up, or so we originally thought. This sounded insane, but my husband insisted it was a great idea for a date. I have been walking and walking for maybe 2 days. I am extremely dehydrated. My husband and I have been separated for hours since that fateful day. We stumbled on a cellar in the middle of the desert. How strange. Why was this even here? I was filled with excitement. However, my husband said we should leave it alone. My husband, Sean, had a feeling that this was locked for a reason. But we had come all this way. I wasn't going to turn back now. Now the lock had a strange symbol on it. You could feel a strange feeling coming down and on the side of the metal cellar door. It had the words, "The Ohio Man." Who or what was the Ohio Man? I wouldn't let this set me back. I had been trained in stealth, espionage, and other arts since birth by my mother. My family were all spies, from Russia, but when I met my husband, I gave up that life, but I still could easily get past locked doors in under 10 seconds. My name is Christy LeVar, and this is the account of the Ohio Man. I wished I listened to Sean and never opened that door. "Baby, I don't think we should open that door. I feel nothing but darkness coming from inside." Sean told his wife. Christy just stared at her husband and told him it's just a door. They argued for 3 minutes before Sean gave up and let his wife open the door. Sean had written about all their adventures, and unbeknownst to his wife, he even had documented accounts of what happened before they knew each other. He knew his wife was a former Russian spy, but he still loved her. He began to write and write, then soon the door was opened. A gust of wind came flooding towards them. Good thing they had goggles on. You could hear silence, but if you listened closely, you could hear someone singing. "I am the Ohio Man. Tell your kids, tell your friends. I am the Ohio Man. Tell your lover, tell your mother. Today you walk, run, tomorrow you fly to the sun. If it's Hallow, shoot 'em dead. Good night, wretched soul. You are dead." This sent shivers down both our backs. Maybe I should have closed the door and went home with Sean. However, curiosity killed the cat, and soon Sean would be gone. If he is dead, I may never know, for this all seems like a dream. This couldn't have really happened, I sometimes tell myself, but this is what happened next. We both go in and see a long hallway. On its ceilings were skulls and bones of what seemed like people. There on the walls were drawings that told of a battle which seemed to have taken place. The closer we got to the other side of the hallway, the more clearly We could hear that dreadful song. You could see candles placed on the sides of the tunnel, spacing about 2 feet apart. A man in a purple and black cloak soon walked to our direction. Sean soon told me, "No," he demanded, "that we run." So, we began to turn back. However, to our dismay, the door was gone. No, that wasn't true, for it was just here. Every time we turned around, we would be facing the same direction, and the man was getting closer and closer. The man soon spoke. "Hello, children of mankind. My friend over there near the tombs requires a blood sacrifice, and you two will do simply fine." The mysterious man pulled a scythe-like weapon and sliced off my husband's fingers. Sean shouted in pain, but he would do anything to save me. My husband loved me, and in this moment, I feared we would soon die. Sean screamed, "Christy, run, you have to make it past the man. I love you, baby, always and forever." As my fight or flight primal instincts kicked in, I jumped on top of the mysterious man and stabbed him in the eyes, gouging out his eyeballs with the poison daggers I always kept on me. Years of training from my mother paid off. I often asked my mother what the point of being trained as a deadly weapon in the 21st century was for. This was why, and now I would do anything to protect the man I loved. As I have flashbacks of my birth and life, I knew our lives wouldn't end here. In May, a child was born. It was the 1990s when I drew my first breaths in this world. My mother, Hilda Vespici Argon, came from a long bloodline of assassins, spies, and warriors. The men of our families were both warriors and assassins. The women of our family either became spies, assassins, or both. Since the days I could walk, my mother put a blade in my hands. I often cried, for when the children of Pushkin, Russia, were out playing with friends, I was learning how to be a weapon. Dance classes, how to use knives, how to fight, were all things my mother taught me. If things weren't done to standard, I would be scolded harshly. However, my mother never hit me, unless it was training in hand-to-hand combat. I knew my mother was only doing what she felt was right. So, by the time I was 15, I was a weapon of mass destruction. It wasn't until I met Sean that I gave up on this. Love makes you do wild things, I often told myself. My husband, Sean, was spectacular. His knowledge of everything was second to none. His strength was unmatched. I could stare at my husband for hours, and the same butterflies in my stomach I got when we first started dating was still there every time I looked at him. Sean was perfect to me, and we never had any serious fights, our entire lives. However, I did realize something about my husband. At first, it happened gradually, but soon it was evident that something was definitely off. Sean often spoke of worlds beyond Earth, parallel universes, and a place of magic called the Wayward. He often told me that the Queen of the Wayward was magnificent. At first, I thought my husband was seeing other women. This made me jealous and upset. However, I soon calmed down and knew my husband would never do that to me. He always told his family and friends how special I was to him, and the sparkle in his eyes said it all. This man was in love with me just as much as I was in love with him. We had been married since 2011, and it was amazing. I can't lie, every single day was perfect. Sean went to work one day. He worked for a mining company, and on that fateful day, the mining caves collapsed on my husband. This injury made him lose his right leg. His road to recovery was miraculous, but also made me question reality. He told me that he finally found the wayward lady and that his leg was healed. I thought maybe time had healed his injury. Doctors said he would never recover from this. However, he proved them wrong. I was just overjoyed that karma smiled on my husband, my light in the shadowy world, my candle in the night, my lover and my king. Sean was forever all those things to me. This trip was actually his idea, but now we were getting attacked and trapped in this sandy, barren cellar. Would we escape? The man I had stabbed didn't even cry in pain. He just stopped. I took this opportunity to run. I grabbed my husband and we soon fled down the tunnel. The closer we got to where the singing originated from, the darker it got. Not as in the lights were going out, but blood-stained stones, more bones, and an eerie feeling was about in the air. I soon stopped to hear the song from a dark, vile, and grotesque-sounding voice. It was here I heard the full song. It sent shivers down my spine. Ohio, where did you go? Ohio? Death requires bloody stones. I am the Ohio man. Tell your kids, tell your friends, tell the city and the folks. I am the Ohio man. Tell your lover, tell your mother. Today you walk, run. Tomorrow you fly to the sun. If it's Hallow, shoot 'em dead. Good night, wretched soul. You are dead. Ohio, Ohio, Ohio. I come for vengeance. I come for blood. Here is a rope. Here's a chain. Beloved death, rip my veins. I am scared, afraid, and look behind me. My husband is gone. Where did he go? All of a sudden, I saw a body fly towards the sound. Where the song was coming from, there was a tomb that read, "The Ohio Man." The tomb splits in two and a hand comes out the ground. It was a man in a nice-looking suit, but he had a cowboy hat on. He soon grew demonic-looking teeth and grabbed the flying body in midair. I soon recognized the body flying, for it was Sean. The man soon had his fill as Sean lay on the ground seeming lifeless. The man soon reverted to another appearance. His skin no longer looked as a dead man, for color came to his face. A real-life, living vampire, one might say. He seemed to look like a kind and loving man. However, that trickery would not work, because I had just seen him feed on the blood of my husband. The man finally spoke to me. "Hello, daughter of mankind. I am the Ohio man, once a dead fetus inside my mother's womb, casted away by the lies of the wayward lady and birthed from the Webster's dark legacy. It was Darius who cursed my mother's womb. Thus, I died in the 20th century. For years I thought to be dead until my brother Felix came to me. That wretched soul had no tongue but was tired of living a life of a slave. It was when Sergio Webster lost his memories before he came to Ohio. Felix had stumbled upon a door that was opened out of thin air. It was a strange book flying which was flying at speeds that could slice even the wind itself, like a knife to butter. It was then that a piece of wisdom's edge bark got lodged into my brother's skin, and thus he became the catalyst of rebirth. Felix only sought to be saved from this life Sergio gave to him. Thus, his body became whole again over time. His once severed tongue healed, and his mind became one that could rival most humans. He could create portals to places that were beyond human understanding. He soon entered the wayward. It was then he found Darius. Felix went to the forbidden tombs of the wayward, a place where the dead resided, those who had died. In these tombs the Gillicuner lived, a monster that would eat the fallen souls and purify the world again. Felix soon created a spell through the dark arts, for he found a way to overcome death. The man that could help him was Darius von Delgato. Wisdom's edge bark would open the mind of those it touched. Average humans would die inside the wayward, for its air was toxic to humans. However, the Webster bloodline was different because of the Webster curse, a curse placed on the family by a witch in 1703. Death would no longer haunt them for a century. They would never be sick after their first transformation. The family would become demons, and madness would set in. By the time of Heinrich Webster, they had found a way to erase the madness their family had been tormented by, but this was only temporary. Even though they lived long lives, they would slowly start to lose their minds, and it wasn't until the birth of Sergio Webster that this would eventually stop. Thus, Felix Webster and Darius began their plan. They found the dead child of Anna and Heinrich Webster, the child who had died, the first child who never got to experience life. And so, Felix and Darius resurrected him. However, Darius was smart and cunning. In order to resurrect this child, a life had to be given, So Darius killed Felix by feeding his very soul to the corpse of the dead child. Darius soon stole the dark arts of the late Felix, and so I was born, slowly incubating in a tomb. I needed the blood of humans to be fully awakened. Thanks to you two, I am awakened, and my hatred for my family is burning my drive and passion. For Sergio Webster had the power to resurrect me but didn't. I will end him, I will devour him, and steal his powers. When he is begging for his life, I will lay him to rest. Darius has collected 8 of the artifacts of the 12, and we will show the world of our great power, the Ohio man told me. Just then, a portal opened, and I saw a creature so frightening, for it was tall and slim. Its bones were visible, but I would never forget its orange, dark eyes. The Ohio man and Darius soon disappeared, but where to? I soon would find out later that they went to a state called Virginia. My husband soon got up, as if nothing had happened. We would soon find out that the wayward lady had blessed him with a power of immortality. It wasn't that he didn't feel pain, but repeatedly, even after death, he would come back. However, the more times he died, the longer he would stay dead. When we turned around to go back to the entrance, the door finally was there. This place was obviously cursed with the forbidden dark magic of Darius, but now he was gone, and we could escape. Sean and I soon left and went back home. However, the news of people disappearing in Smithfield, Virginia, would soon reach our ears. So, we made a trip to that small, quiet town because Sean's mother still lived there. However, what we found there was an epidemic that would haunt that small, quiet town. A story so dark that even people who weren't religious would seek help from God. When we arrived, it was quiet, barren, and filled with such a dark presence, we wondered if this was the right place. It seemed as if nobody was even here. During the day, you could hear a bell ring, and we soon found out what that bell meant. Sean and I would soon meet Austin, Officer Braxton, and former pest exterminator called Billy Tarvin. The 5 of us would later be heroes of this small town. We kept this illness from spreading. I never believed in other worlds, the paranormal, or even gods. However, in the year 2024, this experience would forever shake me to my core. Sometimes I felt like Sean was no longer Sean, and if you told me this would happen, I wouldn't believe you. Before we got to Smithfield, there would be a fight, a battle that temporarily tipped the scales of this war. In my head, I could hear that dreadful song playing on repeat. Ohio, where did you go? Ohio, death requires bloody stones. I am the Ohio man, tell your kids, tell your friends, tell the city and the folks. I am the Ohio man, tell your lover, tell your mother. Today you walk, run. Tomorrow you fly to the sun. If it's Hallow, shoot 'em dead. Good night, wretched soul. You are dead. Ohio, Ohio, Ohio. I come for vengeance. I come for blood. Here is a rope. Here's a chain. Beloved death, rip my veins. Both men start running towards the back of the church, past the congregation and past the 2 officers. The night was growing quickly dim, and carnage was in the air tonight. You could taste the fear on them as if they were children again. Elder Xavier and Darius fled the second they saw Bruce Odeski, for they knew of his origins and the man who slaughtered men without remorse. A monster who was no longer governed by morals and lacked any sliver of empathy. Bruce Odeski was known as the Crimson Black Hatchet. His story was popular among southern states, such as Florida. He would butcher men and young boys for fun. Bruce left wives widowed and daughters fatherless. The thing about Bruce was something one could only imagine. The more he killed, the more he transformed into a hideous beast. This was the Odeski bloodline. The sun fueled his rage, and the moon gave him the power of 100 men. His strength was only second to Sergio Webster, or at least up till now. Children would cry, and men were driven into insanity due to fear by just the mention of his name. Bruce held an axe that would react to him like a boomerang. Once thrown, it would eventually come back to him. However, thankfully, the gods had favored the two cowards for Xavier, and Darius ran and ran until they reached the exit. Out of breath and exhausted because their legs were tired, but at least they made it out alive. However, the gods did not favor them, unfortunately. For when they made it outside, what greeted them was death itself. The sun of destruction and carnage awaited them. I thought I smelled a remnant of the past. Another maggot dies tonight, another ant to stomp down, another flea to consume. I love it, a mysterious voice said. When the voice approached the two who fled, you could see it clear as day. A man who looked to be around 30 approached Darius and Xavier. Elder Xavier told the man he was not scared, for he held Pizer Gomi Venupi and created a rifle from the dirt. Elder Xavier shot the mysterious man 5 times in the chest and 7 times in the head. The man then uttered words, so strange it left them shaken. 5 times 7. That's how many times you will die. The man's bones started to break and tear. He grew claws made of bones out of his nails. He grew in height to up to 8 feet and ripped off Xavier's head. This beast tore open his flesh like paper to the shredder, and he ripped out his heart to eat it. 1 time, 2 times, then 35 times the beast did this. Each time Elder Xavier died, he would be revived by some strange magic. Soon, Elder Xavier was nothing but a mere plaything. A lamb to the slaughter, a truly frightening sight to behold. This was the night Julius Wagner Xavier Peterson would die. Xavier was a long friend of Pastor Bobby. This would drive Pastor Bobby to the edge, and Sergio would know true fear. Xavier soon asked why, after dying over 30 times. Because I am bored, and I'm getting ready to kill your friend. You fleas seem to have forgotten about the great Sergio Webster. I am the boogeyman of your nightmares. I am fear itself, the mysterious man said. So, this was Sergio Webster. He was as ruthless as legend said he was. Sergio quickly made easy work of Xavier. He just took Pizer Gomi Venupi, which was an artifact of the 12. Pizer Gomi Venupi was a cheap knockoff of the powers Sergio possessed. Then Sergio's gaze fell upon Darius. Darius was frozen in fear, for Sergio had killed him in the 1900s. However, Darius was different for all that. Fear was just trickery. My old friend, look at what you did with the gift I gave you. You just spit on the precious miracle I bestowed on you as a child. You would have died a slave if not for me. Stop this senseless fighting, for you now cannot beat me. I have grown too strong for you, and not even you can stop the genocide. The Queen of the Spatial Expanse requires food. This town is its food, but you will do just fine. The Gilokunar, who once was used to purify, is now at my command to suck souls dry. Once a loving creature now has an insatiable hunger that nothing can quench, so it eats and eats, but like the sin of gluttony, it can never be satisfied, Darius said as he approached Sergio. However, Sergio would not be easy to defeat. Darius von Delgado opened a portal. In the portal, a boy came out. At first sight, the boy was just harmless, until moments later, a silver chain around its neck appeared as it was speared with something for spikes running through its chest. Stupid filth, do what you were created to do, you filthy maggot, before I kill you, Darius said. The boy obeyed Darius, but had a sadness in its eyes. The boy then transformed into what we know now as the Vent People, a grotesque hellish creature. It ripped into Sergio's skin so easily, and for the first time, Sergio Webster felt a pain so excruciating he thought he might die, for humans, gods, and devils all shared the same fate when up against these creatures. Death was the only option, or so it seemed. Sergio's cries could be heard throughout the church, throughout the town of Smithfield, in the vents, and eventually would even reach the ears of the wayward lady. Sergio finally felt true fear as the pain shot through his body. His body was rejecting the parasite, for what lived inside him was darker, more sinister, and multiple hosts could not share his brain. Sergio felt as he did when he was a child, when his father would beat him to the verge of death. "Mother, I'm coming home finally," Sergio Webster said. When the creature was about to attack again, the vents opened, and what came out was a creature so vile the earth would shake. Its very presence would drive any man to the ground in fear. It looked as the other creatures, but had a white heart-shaped symbol on its chest and wore a crown. It had a cloak about it and was far larger than the others. Its muscles looked of steel. It grabbed Darius easily and ripped off his face, tore off his flesh, and ate it like chicken. It screamed and screamed until it finally faced the boy who transformed. "My brother, we are no longer enslaved by Darius von Delgado. We are free to pick our own path. After living with humans for years, I finally now know that not all humans are bad. A human called Austin had always been nice to me, and even when I took him, for the rage I felt in my heart for humans, he easily forgave me. He said I could only rewrite my future, not the past," the mysterious other creature said. The two of them reverted back to their human forms, for all vent people were originally humans. The boy's chains and shackles disappeared, for Darius had died, and the other creature looked as a little girl. She walked over to Sergio and introduced herself as the Queen of the Spatial Expanse. She said her kind was created by Darius and Bobby. They were alive due to DNA and gene splicing. They were the result of humans, the Gillicunar, and a tapeworm all mixed together. They needed a host to survive and could wear the host's bodies for up to 300 years. The Queen of the Spatial Expanse said her people originally were born on Glimmer Prime, a place far beyond the Milky Way galaxy. The way to their planet was through dark magic. As she removed the parasites that her brother inflicted on Sergio, his pain stopped, and briefly there was a calm. You see, the vent people multiplied by scratching the flesh of organisms or by biting them. The Queen of the Spatial Expanse was the only one who could create offspring by procreating with other life forms. Her form was the closest to a humanoid. The others looked all deformed, for their DNA would be mixed in with those it infected. The vent people were parasites at their very core. Just then I saw it. A door opened and a woman whose beauty was unmatched came through, but her dark orange eyes told a different story. The grass outside began to wither away, and you could smell death in the air. "You may not harm Sergio Webster. Killing him is my job alone. I am the Lady of the Wayward." The woman spoke. "My name is Billy Tavar, a former pest exterminator, and the story I will tell you soon was a story of a battle that would last a lifetime. This is the story, a tale, a real account of why the Wayward Lady, Sergio Webster, and Bruce Odesky were not part of the final battle between me, Austin, Officer Braxton, Christie, and Sean LeVar versus Pastor Bobby." Chapter 4. Dead Men Tell No Tales. Bruce was a savage beast, but he stood no chance against the harbinger of death. You see, up till now, those humans affected by the Wayward via Wisdom's edge bark, and those who came from the Wayward had never witnessed the forbidden dark arts created by Felix Webster. These arts sought power through blood sacrifice and eventually would create the Vent people. Those who possessed those dark arts in history were only 4, which included Felix Webster, Darius, Pastor Bobby, and Noah Webster. Each time the dark arts were passed down and stolen, it got stronger, however, demanded a greater sacrifice. The dark arts were created from insanity, chaos, destruction, carnage, hatred, malice, lies, gluttony, homicide, grief, depression, and madness. Together, the dark arts of 12 sins were born. I needed to escape now. It was a horror scene unfolding right in front of me. Bruce and Bobby started fighting. I needed to find cover and quickly before I shared the same fate as Austin. As far as I knew, Austin was dead, and backup was not coming. I hide behind a bench that had been broken from the axe of Bruce Odesky. Just then, Pastor Bobby begins his speech. I wish Bruce hadn't let him finish, for it was then I realized that his very words affected the environment around him. The Ohio man was something the world had never seen. O wretched mother of the damned, hear my cries. Heed their lies. Here lies 12 erotic lies. The witch does fly. Insanity, madness, chaos, carnage, hatred, malice, lies, gluttony, homicide, grief, and depression gift me with the Queen's light embrace. You were created from the dust, and the dust you shall return. Children of the glimmer, feast and feast. Rip this sinner's bones, take him to the void, sing the song of death. I am the Ohio man, Pastor Bobby said. All of a sudden, a portal opened up, and I heard people. People were singing, a song that would haunt me forever. The Ohio man, Ohio's land, holy nights, sinner's blight. Oh, Ohio, where did you go? Sinners turn to dust, rip her mother's soul because her baby is a wretched one. Death brings madness. Can you hear him? He comes like a champion. The bells are ringing. Ohio, where did you go? Ohio, death requires bloody stones. I am the Ohio man. Tell your kids, tell your friends, tell the city and the folks. I am the Ohio man. Tell your lover, tell your mother. Today you walk, run. Tomorrow you fly to the sun. If it's Hallow, shoot 'em dead. Good night, wretched soul. You are dead. Ohio, Ohio, Ohio. I come for vengeance. I come for blood. Here is a rope. Here's a chain. Beloved death, rip my veins. As the voices from the portal came, it grew silent. But only moments later, creatures come out of the portals, the walls, and the vents. Nowhere was safe, so I decided to take my chances and run. Legs, you better not fail me. Move legs, move. I, Officer Juliet Braxton, say to myself. However, fear had crippled me, and I couldn't move. The creatures attacked and attacked. Bruce cut them down with ease. You see, Bruce was different. He couldn't feel pain. For as a kid, his nerves were damaged so badly, he lost the ability to feel pain. If Bobby wanted to kill this crimson-black hatchet of death, he needed to think. The once colorful church was now stained red. Red was on the pews, on the walls, on the ceiling, and even in the carpet. The creatures came and came. It seemed as if there were no end. Smithfield had a population of 3,000 residents, and it seemed like all of them were now part of Pastor Bobby's creations. They soon overpowered Bruce at dusk. Bruce lost his immense strength at dusk and would be weakened till the sun was at its highest. Bruce drew power from the sun and moon, but now he was at a disadvantage. The creatures threw Bruce into the portal. Bruce fought and fought, trying to escape, but soon the portal closed behind them, severing Bruce's left arm as it closed. I am at a loss for words. I finally gained the strength to run. However, I stepped on a broken piece of glass, and all eyes turned to my direction. I knew it was my end. Feast on her, my children. Children of the glimmer, have your fill, Pastor Bobby says to the mutant, hellish creatures. They ran and chased me. I ran towards the exit and eventually made it outside. What greeted me was the dead body of a man. He had been ripped and torn apart. I would later find out that Elder Xavier was this man, who stood no chance against the son of carnage. However, that man in the purple and black cloak was still alive. I keep running till I reach a beautiful woman who had hatred in her eyes. Her skin was pale and scaly. Her eyes a deep dark orange, and she was holding the man I would soon learn was Sergio Webster. Weren't they mortal enemies? What had happened? There was no time to celebrate because the creatures were nearing me, as you heard vile screaming from the monsters. Bobby, Sergio has slain our friend Xavier, but the dark arts has proven a great weapon against this vile creature. These degenerates stand no chance against us, Darius tells Pastor Bobby. Just then, Pastor Bobby breaks down into tears and begins crying. Sergio, why must you take everything from me? My life, our mother, and now my dear friend, you are a wicked man. My heart cries for my fallen loved ones. I am the way to true enlightenment, and for your many sins, I will kill you. I am the Ohio man born from the darkness you created in the wayward. I now curse the wayward lady for eternity, and she will no longer be able to come to earth by her own accord. I banish you to the glimmer. This world is mine, and I will feast on the sins of the entire world, Pastor Bobby said. All of a sudden, two portals opened up and sucked both the wayward lady and Sergio into somewhere unknown. Sergio went through the left portal, which was known as the Glimmer. I could see a planet that was barren like a desert and had heat coming from its core. Dead, grotesque, huge bugs that looked as if they could rip anything within a matter of seconds. The wayward lady went to the right portal, which was the wayward. Ever since this day, the wayward lady could not come back to Earth unless she possessed the body of a human. However, before sending Sergio through this portal, he told Sergio Webster he had trapped Bruce Odesky to the same fate. When Sergio asked him who he was, he finally told him, "I am Bobby Webster, the first unborn child of Heinrich and Anna." Then the portal closed. The next time the world would see Sergio was in 2025. However, Sergio would be a far greater threat to humanity than he ever was. I, Officer Braxton, thought it would be our end. However, the Queen of the Spatial Expanse came and bit the hand of Bobby and tore it off. Just then, a young man from the shadows came and stuck a sword into his severed limb before he could cast a dark art to heal himself. Then the man threw what seemed to be a UV grenade into the air. All of Bobby's children, who were the vent people, screamed in pain. Black, gooey substances came from their eyes and out the wounds of their necks. These people reverted back to their human forms. Some of the people just fell apart and became boneless suits, for their bodies had been pushed way past their limits. The mysterious man had armor of what seemed to be like bones, and a sword made of the same material as his armor. He quickly yelled to follow him. I took this opportunity to run. So, I ran and ran until we entered the church's basement. When things had calmed down, I see a man who introduced himself as Billy. Billy would become a long-lasting friend until our final days. The mysterious man finally spoke, and I recognized his voice, but where had I heard his voice before? Hello, survivors of mankind. I am the Glimmer King, and this is the Queen of the Spatial Expanse. We must band together to stop this madness from spreading. You may have known me as Austin, and you may have known the Queen of the Spatial Expanse as my sister Ava. We must take a stand and fight back. Fight for your fallen friends. Fight for your fallen children. Fight this hellish beast, for Pastor Bobby corrupts all those who hear his words. I am lucky, for I was blessed with the Glimmer's light. Once a human, but because I survived death itself inside the Glimmer's pocket, I have evolved. My children have been corrupted, once a loving and kind race of beings, but now a parasitic race due to Bobby's inhumane experiments. Pastor Bobby has infected our minds with the anti-wisdom's edge bark, better known as the dark arts. But I am no longer affected by this. If there is anyone with knowledge on how to extract this and give it to all our people, please speak now. I am tired of running. I am tired of our loved ones crying. The hold of the New Union Church must be purged now. Austin says. I was in shock. For what happened to Austin? Did he know his sister was alive this whole time? What was the Glimmer? But most importantly, how would we stop this son of a bitch from destroying mankind? Austin was no longer a scared 19-year-old boy. And so, after his speech, we started a plan to stop Darius and Bobby once and for all. However, before that, we would need to survive the night. My name is Officer Juliet Braxton, and this is the beginning of the night that would destroy us. The night the earth terraformed into madness, and the night our lives shattered. However, even in this terrifying darkened moon, hope found us. Chapter 5. The Delirium Effect. The bell of the Smithfield Plaza begins to ring. Ring, ring, ring. What the hell could that even mean? There was literally nobody in the streets. "Christy, we got to go. I don't like this," a Sean LeVar tells his wife. Christy and Sean finally made it to Smithfield, Virginia, but it was a ghost town. All of a sudden, they see hordes of creatures start chasing them. The creatures looked severely deformed. Bumps on their face, or was it boils? A skinny frame with bones visible. However, their hands and feet were huge and stood towering over us. A small eye on the left and a huge eye on the right. These creatures had dark skin, as you could smell burning flesh about in the air. The only words they screamed were, "Ohio, Glimmer, Bobby." Each time they would say these words in a succession of 3. The first time they sounded like children, the second one was deeper, and the third was so vile it would send shivers down your very spine. My name is Sean LeVar, and this is the night we found out about the delirium effect. As the creatures come at us, I punch them and punch them like a madman. However, their boils would soon explode, burning my flesh. I scream in pain and tell my wife not to attack these hellhounds from hell. We would soon see a church. We had to get away from the masses of infected as soon as possible. If you told me that these creatures were zombies, I would have believed you. "We are almost there, baby. Just a few more steps." Just then, the doors swing open, and another horde of these monsters start chasing us. Monsters are on our right side, in front and behind us. Just then, we see a cellar door which looks like a basement. Christy says, "No, no, no, I am not going into another cellar." I tell my wife we can't stay here. It's either the cellar or get eaten by these zombies. So we head to the cellar and lock it behind us. We finally escaped. I'm not sure where the hell we are, but we walk and walk and walk. Then we met them: Austin, the Glimmer King; Ava, the Queen of the Spatial Expanse; Officer Juliet Braxton, a police officer; Billy Tarvin, the pest exterminator, and those who were cured from being the monsters we had been running from. To my surprise, my mother was among them. Finally, karma had smiled on me, for I do not know what I would do if she was amongst the damned. We planned to stop Pastor Bobby. It would take all of us. Then Billy Tarvin tells us he knows a way into the church. He said he was a pest exterminator, so we entered the sewers. However, what would greet us was a beast of immense strength, the first son of the Gilicunar, once a being of love and sought only to purify the souls of the wicked, now a beast that devoured the light of this world. The first son of the Gilicunar was called Harkondomideus. It was here we learned of both the story of Austin and Billy. Chapter 6. The Son of the Gilicunar, Part 1. Once upon a time in the Wayward, there lived a creature of love, passion, grace, and kindness called the Gilicunar. It was placed there by the Council of the 12. Its job was to purify the dead souls of mankind and those who died early, saving infants from limbo and guiding those to the light. After Sergio Webster cursed the Wayward, it sought violence and hatred. But slowly it reverted back to its original ways of love. However, Felix would soon turn the Gilicunar to something of a monster, and thus the Gilicunar started devouring infants, children, men, and women, along with their offspring, because for years it had done all this good with nothing to show for it. When Darius came back and stole the dark arts, he enslaved this beast and its children. How did this beast have children who would procreate with such a monster? Pichili Ragnavar did. She was a beautiful soul with the trait for mischief, the sister of the one who tried to kill Sergio but failed, and also the daughter of the Wayward Lady. Pichili was not part of the Council of the 12. Instead, she sought only to strengthen nature and the hearts of children. She was curious, and this would lead to her downfall, I saw a creature so huge, so pure, so filled with love, yet so dark in the woods by the forbidden tombs. My mother, whose name we must never speak of, told me often to stay clear of that. My mother never wanted me to do anything fun. She was so boring. So on that fateful day, I approached the Gillicooner. It was an average day in the Wayward. Butterflies, birds, and dragonflies are flying in the air. You could taste the sweet smell of the air. Nature was singing a beautiful song that you could feel on the air. I, Pieseli, the Baron of Love, could feel the love of the entire ground. However, a scared, frightened creature was in front of me. It told me of what an invader did to the mainlands of the Wayward, how it tried to save the Queen but was driven to madness. You see, the Wayward was divided into 3 lands: the Von Empire, the Ragvinar capital, and the Forbidden Tombs. 3 children of the Wayward controlled each land. In the north, the Baron of War, Kali Braxtin Vini, ruled over the lands of the Von Empire. In this land, the residents were taught about war and trained in military branches, day in and day out. In the south, the Baron of Love P. Chili Ragnivar resided. I created a place of healing and rebirth. In the west and east, the Baron of the Mysterious Arts resided. At first, Darius, the 3rd son of the Wayward, ruled this place, a place for science and those who were condemned to slavery due to their sins. However, after Sergio Webster corrupted this land, that place laid barren and desolate. I began to talk to the Gillicooner, and the more I talked with him, the more in love I fell with this creature. It was so sad that it had been left to die and cast away by its master Darius like it never mattered. Soon we would spend time together until that faithful day when my mother found out. My mother followed me unbeknownst to me and quickly threw a fit. I was sentenced to a burial of 200 years. The Gillicoonar would not have this, so it fought and fought until death came. It was then I created a bridge that would separate the Von Empire and Ranivar. I soon studied forbidden arts, and it was when Felix found me we learned how to resurrect the Gillicoonar. When we revived it, we ran off into the woods, never to be seen again. However, the dark arts needed a sacrifice. I made love with the Gillicooner. Not much different from humans, but it had the strength of over 10,000 armies. A golem, a protector, driven mad by my brother Darius. We would make love every night, and soon I was with children. My children were born. It has been 14 hours, but my eyes won't stop bleeding. I feel like life is fading away. Jackson and Ellie Ragnavar, I love you. Your father, the Gillicooner, will protect you. So that was the day the 5th daughter of the Wayward died. However, instead of peace, the Gillicoonar would seek to kill those who wielded mysterious, forbidden dark arts. The children of the Gillicoonar would share the same hatred as their father, for the curse of the Wayward had warped their minds and madness set in. Chapter 7. The Son of the Gillicoonar, Part 2. "Run! We have to make it past Edgar's bullet station," a woman screams to her son Richard. The woman grabs her son's hands and they run. The two sprinted, for the devil was lurking behind them. Demonic growls and howls from the parking lot could be heard about, in the air. The sun was setting, and what awaited the two was carnage. The woman's name was Beth, and she ran. Beth ran past the parking lot, she ran past the grocery store, and finally made it. She could see Edgar's bullet station, which was a train station. They needed to get inside and call for help. However, what greeted them inside was a scene that would make mothers cry. This was the story of the children of the Gillicooner. The door opens, and what awaited Beth was dead bodies of what used to be humans. Beth held her son close to her chest, and her relief for reaching the train station turned into fear. Sweat was dripping from her forehead to the ground, and she even felt the sting of that same sweat pierce her eyes as sweat ran down her face. Her heart was beating so fast, she thought she might die. for on the ground laid the severed body parts of these unfortunate souls. Arms, legs, heads, and even organs lay on the floor. Just then she heard another growl. How could this be? The monster was behind them. What approached the two was a voice of a monster from the front. The woman tried to flee, however. The monster from behind grabbed her as her child fell to the floor. Richard was only 3 years old. The boy fell so harshly you could smell the blood from his head running down. The tall, stone and scaly-like monster then grabbed Beth's son and ate him, ripping through the boy's flesh like jello. The creature ripped, and then finally spoke. I am the son of the Gilokunar. For taking away my mother, Pichili Ragnivar, this world would know death. I was born from an unblessed union. My birth was the cause of her death. Once as a boy I was called Jackson, but years of hatred in my belly has given me a new name. I am Harkondomedeus. Now your son will be sent to the pits of the forbidden tombs. My father, the Gilokunar, and my sister, Ellie, Portitius, will devour you. Accept your fate, child of the damned. Just as Harkondomedeus said this, two creatures came from behind Beth. They devoured that poor wretched soul called Beth. This was the fate most humans shared against the Gilokunar and his children. Billy Tarvin tells us about the sewers, that he was a pest exterminator and, in his arsenal, he had the ability and knowledge of how pests operated. This knowledge would come in handy. As Billy told his story to Austin, Officer Juliet Braxton, Christie and Sean LeVar, and the queen of the spatial expanse, who was Ava, there was an eerie feeling about in the air. You see, Billy Tarvin had just moved to this small town of Smithfield, Virginia. He was tired of the busy life of the city and needed a change. Billy had just gotten out of a bad relationship because his ex-girlfriend had been caught cheating on him. She would often tell Billy, "What you won't do for me, another man will," always threatening to leave and cheat on him. However, he loved her, or so he thought. That fateful day, he found her in bed with his best friend, Ian. Ian and Billy had been friends for decades, but how could a once-beloved friend betray his trust, and all for what? All for some dumb broad. Billy said to himself, I hope you are happy, because if she cheated on me, she will cheat on you too. So, the next day, Billy left a note, and he left on a bus to a random city. He eventually arrived in the town of Smithfield, Virginia in 2018. For an entire year, Billy Tarvin trained to be a pest exterminator. From termites to rat infestations, he did it all. The pay was great, and life was simple. It wasn't until the year 2019 Billy started hearing noises in the walls. Billy noticed that when a pastor came to town, this was when things changed. At first it seemed odd, but he just told himself it was just pests or rodents inside the walls. So, for 3 years, he dealt with this. Soon, every house and building had these sounds in it. It happened so gradually, people often forgot there was a time these noises in the walls didn't exist. That wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was now, people were going missing for a week or more, but would return. Those who returned were different. Billy Tarvin spoke of a girl who went missing, along with her entire class. This is the story of Ava before her life changed forever. It's March 22nd, 2019, and life was different. A young girl called Ava, who would later be known as the Queen of the Spatial Expanse, was on a field trip with her class. In total, there were 28 children, and all of them seemed to be excited. They were going to visit some caves and see a waterfall. However, soon a scene would unfold that would turn a dream come true to a nightmare. There are kids laughing, talking, and just doing what kids usually do. Tom Greedo has been feeling sick since he and Pastor Bobby came back from getting snacks for everyone at the store. Ava was very perceptive. However, not even she could stop the carnage that Pastor Bobby would unleash into the world. Tom sat in the front near the bus driver and was talking the entire time to another child. The kid often told me the stories Tom would tell her. She said Tom said he visited the edge of the world and he could see the vast expanse of the universe. However, Tom also said he was being followed by a boogeyman and it required blood sacrifice to survive. Tom said it feasted on the blood of humans and came from a world, a different galaxy, a new planet. This planet was called Glimmer Prime. This sounded like a made-up story, so Ava ignored it. Tom eventually fell asleep, and when he awoke, it was just Ava, him, Pastor Bobby, and the bus driver. The bus had weird skin-like suits about, and the seats were stained red. What could have happened? Where did the kids go? All Tom knew was that his head was throbbing, and he could hear voices in his head repeat one word over and over, like a broken record. The voice said to Tom, "Ohio." Soon, they returned home, and the police were notified about the missing kids. At first, they thought Pastor Bobby did something. However, the followers of the new Union Church assured the police that Pastor Bobby wouldn't hurt a soul. I met Tom shortly one day when checking his house for the strange noises in the walls. It was then he told me wild mind-bending stories of Glimmer Prime. Tom told me about the Ohio man. I knew this kid. He was so happy and filled with excitement. However, now, his face was emotionless, and on the back of his neck, he had stitches. When did he get cut? It wasn't my business, but the next time I would see Tom was when he was infecting Ava with the parasite that was living in his brain. Ava is walking home from school one day when it happened. A shadow starts chasing her. This shadow growled and screamed. It sounded so vile and dark, you might even pee your pants from the sound of this creature. Ava started running and running. However, the creature was pursuing her fast. She turned around the corner and there he was. It was Tom, but the noises from behind her were gone. "Hello, Ava. I wanted to say how much I love you. Matter of fact, I have always loved you, so much. You are so beautiful that my heart races each time I see you. I come to give you a gift, Ava, from a place of love," Tom told Ava. Ava started blushing because this was the first time a boy had ever confessed to her. However, this feeling of love would soon be snuffed out. For in that very instant, Tom grabbed Ava harshly, pinning her to the ground. Before she could even react, a sharp blade came out of Tom's neck and scratched Ava. The blade seemed like a hand, and then Tom's body ripped apart. What came out of Tom was a huge creature from hell. This was the very first child of the Glimmer, not only a child of the Glimmer, but the very first vent person. Ava lay there seeming dead for what seemed to be 10 minutes. Then a portal opens, and a shadowy figure picks up Ava, and the thing that used to be Tom follows. Ava, Tom, and the other kids returned weeks later. This was the start of the infection. How did Billy know this? All this happened right outside his house. At first, Billy heard the screaming of a little girl, so he peered out his window. Then he witnessed it all. He wouldn't figure out who that shadowy figure was until years later. As the story of Billy Tarvin's origins finish, we start hearing noises. These noises sounded worse than the vent people. The sewage water became red, and then we saw it. A tail so long and filled with sharp bones, it had to be at least 5 feet long. However, it soon ran past us. The air was filled with death, but what was awaiting for us? This is a tale of both friendships, passion, love, and fear. Chapter 8. The Son of the Gillicunar, Part 3. Before I tell you of what awaited, the Glimmer Squad, which was a name folks would later call us, let me tell you of the story of how the Queen of the Spatial Expanse came to be. Ava was the younger sister of Austin, and for most of their lives they lived a normal life. Ava was 11 years old when she was reborn as the second Glimmer child. That same shadowy figure that stole her from her loved ones did experiments. For this new race of devils needed a leader to rule them. The Vent people had a strength that nobody would ever match until the days of Sean LeVar and Detective Robbie Wayne Clark. So, after weeks of inhumane experiments, Ava finally reached true enlightenment, according to those who studied the teachings of Pastor Bobby. Ava would be deprived of oxygen, injected daily with parasites that would eat her bones, organs, and skin. However, she would be revived through the dark arts, her nails torn off, and when she lay bleeding, begging for death, she would have her fingers broken. As time passed, she no longer felt pain. However, in her heart, she knew she would never see her brother and parents again. She turned off all emotions and gave in to her primal instincts. Like a Neanderthal, she was a savage. These experiments left her deformed, for a man would put parasites that had been mutated with the powers of the dark arts and Pizergomi-Vinupi. Her bones stretched, she became like a monster, and she was left with only hatred. However, the man that took her did not account for her unmatched strength. You see, a human could not beat a being from the wayward, and the dark arts created by Felix Webster was far stronger than any material found in the wayward. In addition, the parasite could eat any life form. Whether it was an empowered being that possessed an artifact or one who wielded the forbidden dark arts, nothing could match this power. The parasite was known as the Glimmer, a foul man-eating bug that would control its host's brain and eventually drive them into madness. The parasite would gradually infiltrate a person's mind, and eventually the Glimmer's thoughts and desires would become that person's thoughts and desires. Ava soon started a rampage, but eventually she remembered her late brother, who she had not seen for a long time. Austin was always nice to her. Austin drew pictures for his sister often and would even go to the parks with her in the past. However, the children of the Glimmer could not contain their rage. It was through sheer determination how she overcame her lust for death, for blood, for carnage. Soon, not even the shadowy figure could contain her as she surpassed and evolved. No longer a human girl, she created the great city of the Glimmer. Glimmer Prime was this planet's name, which was in a different universe and couldn't be found unless one possessed the dark arts. However, a man by the name of Darius von de Elgato would surpass even the dark arts and would enslave her people. The children of the Glimmer could create offspring by just scratching or biting other organisms for their teeth, and claws had parasites which could easily infect the flesh of those unfortunate souls. These inhumane experiments soon created a whole town of the Glimmer children, and Ava soon began to hate humans. Her mind was warped for the hatred she felt, and she even transformed her parents into her offspring. Humans would soon lose their minds completely, all talking of a monster that chased them to the edge of the world. They said the vast expanse of the universe was a beautiful sight to behold, but then they were consumed with darkness. This darkness was due to that bug, that parasite, the Glimmer. It was soon that the man who took her couldn't control her, and he knew he had no choice but to do the unthinkable. The man, Darius von de Elgato, enslaved her entire race and altered their brains. They could no longer think for themselves. Free will was stripped as they heard the song from the shadowy man. The shadowy man was known as the Ohio Man, or you may know him as Pastor Bobby. They now knew Ava as a monster, and Bobby would preach of her, how she was a monster. They soon gave her the name, the Queen of the Spatial Expanse. However, for 400 years she planned, and then she finally found her way to Earth. It took her hundreds of years to make it to Earth. You see, time on Glimmer Prime was different than Earth. 4 minutes on Earth was 400 years on Glimmer Prime. Eventually, she found Austin. She had so many mixed emotions, but in the back of her head, she felt rage for all humans. For Bobby had used religion as an excuse to perform heinous acts of violence on her in the name of God. However, Austin had tears in his eyes and told the Queen of the Spatial Expanse she reminded him of his sister. He spoke of how much he missed his sister, that she was his light in this dark world. It was then Ava began to cry, and she reverted back into her human form. Austin forgave her for transforming their parents and said it wasn't her fault. However, it was too late because she had broken his ribs, and he was losing blood. Whatever happened to him at Peterson Bobby's mental institution for wellness was transforming him, so Ava acted fast and infected her brother with half of her power. Thus, the song of the Ohio man that infected the brain and made you be enslaved ceased to exist. It was worse than death. However, in the end, Austin survived and would become a threat to even Pastor Bobby. This was the story of how Austin became the Glimmer King and how Ava became the queen of the spatial expanse. A story you could only imagine. However, what lurked in the sewers was a far greater threat to us than the vent people. The murky waters of the sewers had a foul stench, which would make you gag. A beast roamed this sewer and had hatred that couldn't be quenched. As we turned the corner, 3 hideous beasts came and instantly attacked us. Sean LeVar was the first one of us to die. You could hear his screams of pain as they immediately impaled him. "Sean, no, no, no," a Christy LeVar explained. Christy threw her daggers filled with poison at one of the creatures. It was Porticius. She ran at Christy, but only met the Glimmer King's blade. You see, the weapons of Glimmer Prime were created by the Glimmer, which was imbued with the dark arts. Not just the dark arts, but a tier of forbidden magic which none could survive. Porticius's head soon rolled off. However, there was no time to stop. Billy and Officer Braxton attacked the biggest one. However, this monster quickly grabbed Billy, threw him into a wall, and bit him. Billy started screaming in pain, and his fingers were broken, and on his shoulder his skin was slowly turning to stone. The monster that had bitten Billy was the Gillacooner. Ava and Austin start battle with his creature, and it was intense. To be honest, everyone thought they might die here. These creatures were far stronger than the average vent people. Officer Braxton holds an injured and dying Billy. "Please don't die. Without you, we would never have made it this far. You are truly a beautiful person. I wish I had met you before the world went to shit, Billy. I would definitely be happy you exist and would never do what your ex and best friend did to you," Juliet says, crying. Billy just smiles and tells her he will be okay. Just then, something is moving in the water. What the actual fuck? There was another creature, and it was coming fast. A lizard-like creature with a tail made of stone, bones, and sharp material emerges from the water. Officer Juliet Braxton and Billy Tarvin just knew they would die here. However, a bright UV light hits the creature as it screams in pain, and a fist from an unknown man punches the beast. It was Sean LeVar. Sean had a power bestowed upon him by the wayward lady. He could come back to life after death. Even though the more times he died, the longer it would take for him to come back, it did have its advantages. You see, Sean's strength would be doubled. He told us later that the Lady of the Wayward told him about all of this when she spoke, to him. However, later on, we would find that death took a piece of him with it. Slowly, Sean would become colder and colder, but for now, he just saved his newly found friends. However, in the back of our minds, we wondered how many times Sean had died already. It took Sean 8 minutes this time. He told us. The first time, it took him 2 seconds. Austin, Sean, and Ava banded together to take down the Gillacooner. All seemed to be useless until Billy did something so wild we were not sure how he pulled it off. Billy had a can in his backpack. It had black, disgusting, and grotesque-looking bugs in it. He then threw the can into the beast's mouth, and thus it happened. The Gillacooner screamed in pain, for the Glimmer was feeding on its body. The Glimmer devoured the Gillacooner, and when it had its feast, Billy threw UV grenades, which was the only thing that seemed to affect this creature. So now the only thing that remained was Harkondomideus. However, he fled into the murky waters again. Harkondomideus had lost both his father and sister. Thus, on this night, the Gillacooner and the foul beast's daughter were slain. Finally, they might be able to meet Pichili Ragnavar in the afterlife. We all are tired, but also happy. Our bond grew, and now we were a great team, or so we thought. When we walked further down, we see a door. Now this door had the words, "The Artifact Room." It was when we got inside, one of us would be driven into madness. As we walk inside, you could see strange objects in there, from a staff which glowed to a cane which had the letter L engraved on it, to even a strange, monstrous-looking hat. There were so many things. Sean LeVar picked up the cane, and when he touched it, his mind was opened. He knew of the great expanse of the world, the answer to life's problems, and how to put an end to Pastor Bobby. Sean began to speak. Christy, Austin, Ava, Billy, and Juliet, I have seen countless possibilities in my head. Now we need to use the power of the glimmer and that staff which holds the Queen's symbol of radiance to stop Bobby forever. By itself, it poses no threat to him, but combined, it will weaken him. We need to make a liquid from the glimmer and dip it into the staff. The one wielding the staff should be Christy, for she has training in hand-to-hand combat. We then should sever that beast's limbs and imprison him under the ground in a tomb where he might not ever harm another person. However, you know Darius might be right beside him, so let me deal with him. Our team was divided on how to proceed. Some were concerned about if one of us died. However, Sean just coldly said, every battle has to have a sacrifice. Sean was now willing to sacrifice even his wife to end this war. If we knew of the powers of the cane he had in his hands, we might have not gone through with the plan. However, we agreed, and so the final battle started. Through the door, you could hear Pastor Bobby preaching and the congregation of zombie-like creatures chanting his name. They were singing that dreadful song of the Ohio man. Would all of us make it in this last stand? Who would be the one sacrificed? Only time would tell. Chapter 9, The Cure to Madness. We finally opened the door, just to be greeted by Pastor Bobby and Darius. Our hearts started pounding. I knew we possessed artifacts and had the Glimmer King's protection. However, would this be enough to stop the carnage that Bobby created? The congregation had beasts lurking in its pews, and so Bobby Webster, known as the Ohio man, spoke, or at least tried to. My friends, tonight we start to spread God's holy name throughout other towns. We must purify the world from the lies of the wayward, from the darkness of the Webster bloodline, and those people who have been driven to madness due to the Queen of the Spatial Expanse. I, Pastor Bobby. Just then, the Glimmer King cut his speech short, for he drove his sword into the head of Darius. However, Darius would have no time to cast his dark arts, for the Queen of the Spatial Expanse ripped his head off, and Christy hit his body with the staff, which was imbued with the glimmer. This was the first time Bobby did not have a plan, for the person who gave him ideas and steered him to victory was gone. Darius laid a lifeless corpse as the glimmer soon consumed his body. Not even bones were left, not even a sliver of blood. Thus, Bobby Webster made a choice that would alter the world forever. Bobby was a Webster after all, so he committed the unforgivable sin and used his dark arts to create a being so strong and vile, you would shit yourself. A pile of 500 vent people soon piled to the ceiling and ripped off the roof of the church. His name was the Vent Baron. Behold, the holy warrior, the holy baron of radiant light and death, the Vent Baron. If a single Vent person has the strength of multiple gods, then this beast has the strength of gods and titans. I, Bobby, will purify this godless world in my own image, Bobby said. Sean LeVar had seen this possibility, so he took a chance and grabbed the can of the glimmer. Sean consumed it, and also ate a piece of the Glimmer King's weapon, not enough to break it, but just a fragment. At last, I know everything. I am the beginning of time, and when the world finally dies, I am time. Sean's wife began to cry, for what was her husband even saying? Was he mad? No, Sean wasn't mad, but he would destroy Pastor Bobby no matter the cause. Sean needed time. He needed 60 seconds, so he told the rest of us to buy him some time. Billy and Juliet fought and fought, the Vent Baron. Every attack seemed to do nothing. However, eventually they figured out its weakness. The weight of this creature was not balanced, for its head was small, its body was huge. It had a gigantic arm, but its other arm was the size of an average human. Its legs were huge, so we attacked its legs, for it was mostly bone. The Glimmer King and the Queen of the Spatial Expanse attacked Bobby. However, he kept talking, for he had the power to affect the environment with just words alone. And finally, Christy attacked the Vent people who remained, which was easy now with the staff she now wielded. When Christy was soon finished, she went for Pastor Bobby. Bones turn to dust break and wither away to nothingness, Pastor Bobby says. Then Christy's bones begin to break and bend. It had been 58 seconds. Somewhere in Sean's heart, he felt something he had not felt since their first encounter with the Ohio man. Sean lost control of his emotions that day, and with the cane in his hand, and with all his emotions he pointed it at Bobby, with his pain and grief, for he was going to lose his wife forever. He became something else. Sand began to come through the windows, floors, and the air. It was getting hard to breathe. Sean could not listen to reason. Bobby began coughing. We all began coughing. The sand crystals in the air was sucking up the oxygen. The pews became dust. The pulpit became dust. Our skin was turning to dust. However briefly, we all felt like our comrade Sean would be lost to madness. Then it happened. Christy managed to move, for the hold Bobby had on her began to loosen. His words were no longer bending reality, for he could not breathe. Baby, I love you always and forever. I never had a single second of regret. Not once, not ever. You are perfect and will be the one to save us all. Just then, Sean cried. But what came out, his eyes were not tears, but black, thick rivers of blood. The cane took what was needed from Sean, his life. However, not before Sean turned Bobby into a corpse. Sean made Pastor Bobby's arms, legs, tongue, and throat sand, and screamed at the rest of us. Smash the sand with the staff and with the glimmer. Do it now, Sean shouted. So, we smashed the sand with the glimmer that Billy had in that can, and with the help of Austin and Ava. Bobby's limbs were eaten by the glimmer, and so was his voice, for these parasitic bugs devoured his vocal cords. It was finally done, but we had one more job to do, and Billy would be the one to do it. I'm not sure I will survive this, but thank you all for giving me a chance to survive this long. You guys will forever be my friends. However, now, we must purge this city. I'm not sure if this will kill you, Austin and Ava. You should leave now while you can. If you can, Billy said. So, the Glimmer King and the Queen of the Spatial Expanse left that night as Billy walked to the center of the town. He held Juliet in his arms, for she did not want this to be their final goodbye. He kissed her on the forehead and threw a UV light grenade into the sky. This was the biggest one he could create. And so, because of this, the town's people reverted back to humans, those whose bodies had not reached their limits. Nobody remembered what had happened. All they knew was that they needed to rebuild their small town. The reason Billy's choice was dangerous was because in order to shoot the grenade and purify the town, you had to detonate the grenade he made, and you had to be 2 feet within radius to detonate it. Billy went to the tallest building to do this. Billy Tarvin was 31 years old when he became the hero of the town of Smithfield, Virginia. His name would live on even till the days of Robbie Wayne Clark, who would experience the curse of the glimmer decades later. However, for now, the names of those who saved this quiet town was written on the stone of fallen heroes in the Smithfield Plaza. On the stone of fallen heroes it read, "Thanks to the heroes who gave their lives, with the fear of death and madness, the town of Smithfield, Virginia, still stands. They are called the Glimmer Squad, and their names are Austin Smith, Ava Smith, Billy Tarvan, Officer Juliet Braxton, Sean LeVar, and Christy LeVar. Although some remain alive, there are those who died saving us. May God rest their souls. Sean LeVar died and wouldn't wake up for 66 weeks. However, by his side was his loving wife, Christy. Austin and Ava made it to another town before going back to Glimmer Prime. They took some of their offspring with them. However, what awaited them when they went back home were the new gods of terror. Glimmer Prime would not be heard from again until the days of Noah Webster in the early 2100s. As for Officer Juliet Braxton, she retired from working as a police officer, for so much had happened. Thus, in the year of 2024, the Vent People was a name nobody heard for a while. A young boy is walking into a building which was closed off to the public. It was quarantined, and all the residents were told not to go within 50 meters of the building, for the CDC had yet to come to clean the building. As the boy looked, it seemed to be a once thriving church. However, here where they buried the Ohio man, you see the Glimmer Squad had buried Bobby here and deprived him of all resources. Bobby was now a limbless man waiting to die. However, could you really kill a man of the dark arts? The boy sees an old scroll and starts reading it. The boy did not know of the battle that took place. As far as he remembers, he was visiting his grandma when an earthquake came and took out most of the buildings. The Glimmer King had put false memories in their heads to protect them of fear. However, the boy finally opened the red-stained scroll out of curiosity and read its words. As he read it, he could hear rumbling and singing in his head. The scroll read, Ohio. Where did you go? Ohio. Death requires bloody stones. I am the Ohio man. Tell your kids, tell your friends, tell the city and the folks. I am the Ohio man. Tell your lover. Tell your mother. Today you walk, run. Tomorrow you fly to the sun. If it's Hallow, shoot 'em dead. Good night, wretched soul, you are dead. Ohio, Ohio, Ohio. I come for vengeance. I come for blood. Here is a rope. Here's a chain. Beloved death, rip my veins. When it ended, the boy was grabbed, but what seemed to be a limbless man and eaten whole. Moments later, that man left to die, emerged. I am the Ohio man. Tell your lover and your mother. Then he laughed a laugh so vile, but moments later, vanished. Chapter 10. The Ragged Robin. He was once my beloved hero as a kid. However, died in an earthquake in the year 2024, in a small town in Virginia. I always looked up to Sean LeVar. We would know him as an important figure of the Glimmer Squad. However, all my love for this man soon faded on July the 4th, 2101. Once a Sean LeVar, driven mad by who knows what, he had killed over 14% of the world's population with my once best friend Noah. What could drive a once beloved hero into madness? I fear that the human race does not have long in this world. I couldn't save my friend Noah, and now I can't save my childhood hero. Sean LeVar became a doctor in 2030. It was this year his wife just disappeared from the planet. However, where did she go? That doesn't matter. I am fucking tired of all these monsters in this world. All paths point to the wayward. How will I save the world from this carnage? My name is Robbie Wayne Clark, and I go now to face off against the man who has enslaved the entire world through science, magic, and deceit. A man so cunning and filled with trickery, he could make a hero think they were the villain. A man who had mastered the element of sand. His name would soon be called the Sandy Hermit, or Dr. LeVar. I do not possess the strength to defeat him, but I have heard of a place through the powers of my ancestors that could give me the strength to fight this demon. This place is in another galaxy and can only be accessed through the dark arts. I am sorry, ancestors. I need power to win this fight. So, I go now to Glimmer Prime. Glimmer Prime was a place only 11 humans ever made it to, and only 5 of them made it back alive to tell the story. I am Detective Robbie Wayne Clark, and if I don't make it back, I am sorry. Character bios and information. Billy Tarvin, a pest exterminator and the hero of the Glimmer Squad who sacrificed his life to save the people of Smithfield, Virginia, who were infected. Austin Smith, the brother of Ava, whose parents died by the Vent people, also became the Glimmer King. Ava, the sister of Austin, whose parents died by the Vent people, also became the Queen of the Spatial Expanse. Her offspring are called the Children of the Glimmer or the Vent people. Her people often call each other brother and sister, information not in the story. Officer Juliet Braxton, officer who becomes a hero of the Glimmer Squad. Pastor Bobby, the antagonist of the story, the brother of Sergio and Felix Webster, also known as the Ohio Man, Julius Wagner, Xavier Peterson, friend of Pastor Bobby and an elder of the New Union Church. Darius von Delgato, son of the Wayward Lady, who ruled over the Forbidden Tombs. Pichili Ragnivar, daughter of the Wayward Lady, who had children with the Gillicunar, mother of both Harkondomidius and Portitius, ruler of the Ragnivar capital. Kali Braxton Vini, daughter of the Wayward Lady, ruler of the Von Empire, died by Sergio Webster, former member of the Council of the 12. The Gillicunar, a beast created by Darius who once was loving until Sergio Webster corrupted the Wayward, turning it into a monster, had children with Pichili Ragnivar, the father of both Harkondomidius and Portitius. Harkondomidius, son of the Gillicunar, and Pichili Ragnivar, originally named Jackson. Portitius, daughter of the Gillicunar and Pichili Ragnivar, originally named Ellie. Sergio Webster, brother of Bobby, the original villain of the series. Bruce Odesky, friend of Sergio, the Wayward Lady, ruler and queen of the Wayward.